Fountain Street Church. Happy Sunday. What a week. I almost added a word to that sentence. What a week. I just mentioned to Linda, I spend very little time on social media. I've got my books and my podcast queue all lined up and dialed it into just a few academics and historians and that sort of thing. And I've been trying to hold on to this media fast from last Lent. It was so helpful. I strongly encourage you to do the same. Decrease your use of social media. I think at this point I subscribe to Mother Earth News and Crane's Business, Grand Rapids. I desire media in my life that is constructive, not destructive. In graduate school in Chicago, at some point, if you go on that path at the Chicago Theological Seminary, you will spend about a year writing your constructive theology thesis. And I can remember thinking, well, constructive theology is kind of a funny name, you know? Like, what are you going to have, a destructive theology? And then I got it. It occurred to me, yeah, you can have a very destructive theology. I want all of us to pay attention to our media consumption because I love you and I want you to be healthy. And this week the news is awful and people are at each other's throats. I also hope that you have a third place to go, to get away. When I'm talking to people about the conditions of their lives, I usually ask them to tell me about their third place. Their third place. Your first place, your second place, and then your third place. This is all from a model of society developed by Ray Oldenburg, and he wrote about this in his work, The Great Good Place. I think it was first published in 1989. This is the idea that in a healthy democracy, you're going to have three places where you invest your time. The first place is the home, and the second place is going to be your workplace, and this is where you make a living. And then the third place is the social environment, where we spend time outside of the home and the workplace. Cafes and bars and libraries and gyms and hopefully the Fountain Street Church. This is a very good third place, I think, where you can go to book groups and organize for justice and learn music and attend concerts, and you can worship on Sunday mornings. And it's important to keep these different places healthy, and that usually means keeping them distinct from each other. It's one of the many reasons that I try to avoid hiring church members to join the church staff, because it forces me to turn their third place into their second place. And then it forces me to magically transform from being their minister into being their supervisor. And when the pandemic came 5 years ago, it transformed many of our first places, our homes, into our second place. It combined the home and the workplace. And things are still messy because of that. Now, there was a co-author of that book, The Great Good Place. Her name is Karen Christensen. And she goes a step further, and then she says that third places, these places that are distinct from home and work, where we go to find community, these are our shared centers of life. They are the answer to loneliness and alienation and political polarization. Incidentally, everything that I just shared there that's my vocational justification. That's one answer to the question, why do we have churches? Because churches, if they choose to be open and affirming and curious places, and most especially open, curious, and affirming, and non-creedal, I believe, they can become vibrant and healthy third places. And you can read all about it in my constructive theology paper. But I saw something this week that almost made me throw my phone. I saw it on my phone. I saw a comment asking why Americans aren't spending as much time in their third places. And a response to that saying that to the contrary, they're spending an inordinate amount of time in their third place. It's just that their third place is their phone. I try to prioritize healthy third places. This week, I was honored to have been asked, just last Thursday, to lead worship and preach at Clark Retirement Home. This is something I love to do. It's a good retirement community, in my opinion, takes the very best of the first place and the third place and kind of elevates them. And I'm serious when I say that I often leave envious. Clark is lovely. Beacon Hill is lovely. On my way to the car, I always think about grabbing an application, saying, I'm ready. But that worship service at Clark last Thursday was a solemn affair because it was the 24th anniversary of 9/11. From 9/11 to now, that's my whole adult life. I was 18 years old on 9/11. It was just a few weeks into my first semester of college. Save for one single summer between high school and college, my entire adult life has been lived beneath the shadow of that day. And for over half my life, then, America has been at war. My sermon that I shared at Clark was about resiliency and wisdom and intergenerational courage and the extraordinary strength of Americans, and this is how we build resilient communities and have a healthy democratic society, and it was a fine sermon, I think. But lingering over my shoulder the whole time, just there behind me, because of the events of this week, or maybe it was under the waters, there was a monster. And those saintly residents of Clark Retirement Community probably didn't go to that Thursday chapel service to do battle with monsters. So I brought us through a solemn and honest and transparent time of reflection on the waters, and I sort of rowed the boat to shore, and I got out of there. They had come that day to remember, reflect, to pray, and to rest. Because for how many people go to church to feel bad or do battle with monsters in those holy and liminal places of the world? Where do they go? Maybe Fountain Streeters. Maybe. So into the darkness we go. I chose the readings today because they both speak of a bounden duty. A duty to build, a duty to design and construct. And don't mistake me into saying that I believe that we're here to force order out of chaos or number the stars or split the atom or write laws. It is not that complicated. Nathan just shared the words of the ancient Greek poet Hesiod. Hesiod, who wrote around the same time as Homer, about 700 BC, right around the same time that the Old Testament was taking shape. Hesiod's poetry and writing was the foundation of ancient Greek ritual and religion. Now, Fountain Street is a symphony of religious practices or expressions, maybe sometimes a cacophony. And I know that there are no fewer than about a dozen Hellenists here, and early 20th century Neoplatonists, Hellenists helped design the sanctuary. There's always been Hellenists in this church. You can look to the window right there, the wisdom window, and there's Plato himself, and there's Erasmus, And ask why Erasmus. Well, I can tell you. One half of that wisdom window is dedicated to the Hellenistic tradition. And humanists, take note. Erasmus is there for you. And then Darwin and Galileo, I think, to tweak the noses of some of our neighbors, but there they are. Right? Hesiod's Work and Days was one of his masterpieces. It's foundational. It's a constructive text. It gives meaning to life by elevating and celebrating the metaphysical value of common things. The entire poem is framed as Hesiod writing a letter to his little brother about working on the family farm. And it's a parable about the good life, about the higher values of actions. Work and justice. Work and justice. And you can't have one without the other. He writes, the gods and mortals alike honor the one who works, who lays foundations, who shapes timbers, who makes secure the dwelling place of community. Labor is the path to honor, and the builder is among the noblest of workers. The dwelling place of community. There, Hesiod is speaking of the third place, all those 2,700 years ago. His work is also, this work and Days is where we also get the origin of the myths of Prometheus and Pandora. Homer could not have come up with that stuff. I just told somebody else. Hesiod wrote another book, though. Another book. I think it's a prequel to Work and Days, and it does not get read as much. It's an entirely different flavor of parable. Hesiod's other work was called the Theogony. Theogony is the birth of gods. Work and Days catalogs everything that brings justice and goodness and peace and abundance. And Theogony describes the opposite. It tells the story of a dark and terrifying shadow. For if labor, building the work of the hands, gives us peace and justice, it is only because in the primordial time, in the before time, the world was a place of constant and endless destruction. In Work and Days, labor and building are the path to honor, but in Theogony, quote, from night sprang doom and black fate and death, and destructive strife gave birth to painful toil, forgetfulness, and famine with tearful face, woes, battles, murders, quarrels, lies, disputes, disorder, ruin, and finally, oath, who brings most grief to humankind on earth. Oath, who brings most grief to humankind on earth. These two ancient stories, Work and Days and Theogony, are like the two sides of a spinning coin. They're like a forked path in a strange forest. The two paths set before us by Hesiod, before humankind, they're as simple as can be. And by choosing the path, we also then will choose the gods that we serve, to build or to destroy. To build or destroy is the choice which upon rests the fate of everything that comes after. And I don't see a way to destroy that can ever be reconciled with beloved community. This week in Utah, on a college campus, a place where building it takes place in the mind, we saw a man make a choice. He chose to destroy. A decision, and that terrible destruction was made very plain to see. And perhaps it was a choice to destroy from some mistaken arithmetic that destruction can end destruction. I don't know. It seems that it was driven by, now we think, alienation and incoherent chaos of a mind that had been poisoned by chronic addiction to the most reactionary places on the internet. But it was a choice to destroy. For hands that are wrapped around the weapons of war cannot pick up the implements of peace and build. One set of hands cannot hold both. Hesiod tells us to build is noble, and we build with our hands. And so with our hands, we make a choice. The sword or the garden shovel, the rifle or the rake, the pistol or the paintbrush. We cannot destroy in order to build. We cannot fight war to make peace. Audre Lorde says famously, the master's tools will never be used to dismantle the master's house. From night sprang death, and destructive strife gave birth to murder, disorder, ruin, and oath. I come here to this place, this campus, every day, almost every single day of the week. I'm here too much, I'll admit. I'm captivated by this location. I'm captivated because this place is a sprawling and beautiful community of builders. I feel that in the DNA of this church, there's an inescapable drive to build, to create, to experiment, to construct. There's traditions here, but I find no traditionalists here. Theologian Yaroslav Pelikan said, "Tradition is the living faith of the dead. Traditionalism is the dead faith of the living." Yeah. I do see tradition here, but I see people building new and useful things on the foundations lived and laid by their spiritual ancestors. And I like being here. I like being with people who are building things. Whether it's in the chapel, where art is being hung or taken down to make space for more artwork, where deep and holy conversations happen. Those conversations are building. Where a space that was once filled with a mural is restored with a new mural that says, "Teach one another how to fly." I see classes being taught here every day of the week, and poetry being written and shared, and I see people honoring and building their bodies and their minds through yoga and meditation and study. And I see movements being built by community organizers and leaders, and movements of resistance. But resistance to what? Resistance to the great and terrible forces of destruction. The Christian nationalists and the fascists and their sycophants are driven by an overwhelming desire to destroy. And I think it is an addiction, and I think it is a religion, and I think it is a destructive theology that worships destruction. They may claim that they destroy only because they want to restore some imaginary past or some mythical before time in their minds. They're just trying to make things the way that they used to be, and that is bullshit. I don't believe a word of that. I don't. I believe that nationalism and that fascism and this awful political movement that has taken the reins of power in America is no more complicated than the actions of common vandals. To seek to destroy. Destroying institutions and traditions, sure, but also families. Destroying families of immigrants, most especially, but also destroying the lives and futures of marginalized people, of transgender people, and now professors and scholars and doctors and scientists and researchers. Their urge to destroy is always most keenly focused on those who build. Of American fascism, Adam Serwer famously wrote in 2018, "The cruelty is the point." And now 7 years later, if I'm being honest, I think that the point, if there is such a thing, is simply to destroy. To destroy. The monster in the water, the thing that is in that darkness, it doesn't hunger to build something or gain something or own something or create something. It doesn't even desire to build a coherent argument. This is why accusations of hypocrisy are pointless and useless. That requires believing that there is something cohesive and coherent being built, and that they desire internal consistency or logic or reason. But I think that cruelty is not the point. Cruelty is the method, and destruction is the point. And in the face of a power that is motivated by the desire to destroy, I believe that the most effective form of resistance is to create, to build, to rebuild if we have to, but to build without ceasing. They destroy institutions. We build them again. They destroy people. We say, no more, no more. And we build and build and build. And though it is easier, it is always easier to destroy. Any idiot can destroy something beautiful, whether it is with a bullet or a bulldozer. They cannot destroy the joy and nobility of creating and building something new. Destruction requires no technical knowledge. To destroy something was the same in Hesiod's age as it is today. But building and creating, this takes many forms, and it benefits from wisdom and intergenerational knowledge. We build and create, and we get better at it because we've been building for 1,000 years. For 2,000, for 3,000 years, we've been building beautiful things. And we'll get better at it. And so I need us to build. I need you to build together. A bullet will not build. And hatred will not build, and violence will not build. The preacher king says, hatred cannot drive out hatred. Hatred can only destroy. Returning violence for violence multiplies violence. Only love, only justice, only building together can bring the dawn. And so as I close this, I want us to pause and rest and hear, take a moment, take a breath. And just imagine. Sit quietly and imagine everything that we have to build together. That we can create and imagine in this moment, this whole sanctuary. One heart, countless hands. Imagine what we have the privilege to build together in this place. Imagine with me for a moment. Just quietly imagine.